Story 1. The wind coming off Malvern Lake had a strange voice that morning, an almost human moan that carried over the frozen surface like someone trying to call for help. Ranger Elias Grant had heard every sound this place could make in winter, but never that one. He paused at the shoreline, frost crackling beneath his boots, and scanned the empty white expanse before him. Malvern Lake sat tucked between two ridges in northern Idaho, a quiet reservoir with cabins scattered along its outskirts. In winter, it froze solid, smooth, pale, untouched. But today, it wasn't untouched. A single dark shape lay at the center of the frozen lake, motionless. Elias narrowed his eyes. Not an animal. Not debris. A person. Jesus, he whispered, radioing dispatch with gloved fingers that suddenly felt stiff. This is Ranger Grant. I've got, possible human remains on Malvern Lake ice. Requesting responders immediately. Copy that, Ranger. Stay put. Back up en route. Stay put. Elias didn't listen. He stepped out onto the ice. Each footfall echoed across the basin, a hollow thump-thump beneath him. His breath clouded the air in front of him, and the temperature felt like it had dropped 10 degrees just since he'd begun walking. As he got closer, shapes took form. A woman. Late 20s, maybe early 30s. Face pale. Eyes wide open, staring at the sky. Dark hair frozen into thin strands around her head. She wasn't wearing winter clothes, just jeans, a light sweater, and a coat too thin for the season. No gloves. No hat. Her skin was tinged blue, lips purple, eyelashes frosted white. She hadn't died here willingly. Something else caught his attention, something wrong. Something had arranged them. Not flung naturally outward like someone who collapsed. They were folded, gently laid over her stomach, like someone had posed her after she died. Elias swore under his breath. This wasn't an accident. He knelt beside her, careful not to touch anything. Frozen skin was delicate, evidence fragile. But he saw enough to know one thing for sure. She had a bruise on her neck, oval-shaped, a thumbprint, strangulation, a murder. And then he saw something else, something that made the hair on the back of his neck stand straight. Clutched in her right hand was an object, squeezed so tightly her fingers had frozen around it. A small, waterproof digital voice recorder. The plastic casing was cracked, but it was intact. Elias stared at it, chilled in a way that had nothing to do with the wind. People didn't die with voice recorders in hand unless they were trying to say something before they went. A final message. A final witness. A final clue. He turned his head sharply as the distant sound of engines echoed across the lake. Sheriff's cruisers approaching, ambulance sirens cutting quickly through the morning stillness. Within minutes, snowmobiles arrived. Sheriff Dana Holloway hopped off hers, goggles still on her forehead, ponytail stiff with ice. "What do we got?" she asked. "Female, mid-30s at most," Elias replied. "Look staged. And she's holding something." Dana crouched. "The hell?" The paramedics arrived but made no move to touch the body. Everyone recognized homicide instantly. Dana stood. "Who found her?" "Me," Elias said quietly. "About 20 minutes ago. And no tracks. None. Snow fell last night. Whoever put her here did it before the storm or carried her on the ice somehow. No footprints, no sled tracks, no vehicle marks," Dana muttered. "That's intentional." She turned to her deputies. "Secure the perimeter. No one on the ice except forensics." The scene buzzed with activity now, yellow tape strung between poles on the shoreline, photographers snapping pictures, deputies marking grid sections. Only one question mattered. Who is she? And there was another question Elias didn't want to ask but had to. And why did she die trying to record something? 10 miles away, 7:22 a.m. In a small apartment above a laundromat, 32-year-old Jenna Calloway woke to 5 missed calls. All from the same number. Unknown caller. At first she thought it was spam. Then she checked her voicemail. One message. She pressed play. Static hissed. Then a woman's voice, broken, terrified, whispering like someone hiding in the dark. "Please? I'm so sorry. I didn't know where else to go." Jenna froze. She knew that voice. Even after 4 years. Even after all the therapy. Even after doing everything she could to bury her past. She knew it instantly. Lila. Her sister. Her sister who had disappeared. Her sister who everyone claimed had run away. Her sister whose case the cops had quietly closed. Her sister Jenna had been forced to mourn without a funeral, without answers, without closure. Her sister who wasn't supposed to be alive. But the message kept playing, ragged, frantic. They found me, Jenna. Please, don't let them. A crash. A scream. A man's voice shouting. Then silence. Jenna's heart slammed painfully against her ribs. The voicemail timestamp? 3:14 a.m. Barely 4 hours ago. Jenna scrambled for her coat, phone shaking in her hand, mind racing. Lila wasn't dead. Lila was calling for help. Her thoughts shattered when her phone buzzed with a news alert. Body found on Malvern Lake ice. Sheriff's office investigating suspicious death. Jenna's blood turned to ice. She whispered the thought she was terrified to think. Please, don't be her. But deep down she knew. To us. Back at the lake, 9:03 a.m. Forensics expert Dr. Maren Klein approached Sheriff Holloway with careful steps. You're going to want to hear this. What? Maren held up the evidence bag containing the recorder. It has a file on it. One file. It's damaged but playable. Dana's stomach tightened. What's on it? According to the forensics tech who previewed it, Maren hesitated. Dana frowned. Spit it out. Someone confessing. To the murder? No, Maren shook her head slowly. To something much worse. Before Dana could respond, a deputy approached. Sheriff, we ran the victim's prints. And? You're not gonna like this. He handed her a paper. Dana read it. Her heart dropped. Identified. Lila Calloway. Age 29. Missing person, 4 years. Christ almighty, Dana whispered. Missing persons cases were like open wounds in any community, but Malvern County had only one name that people still whispered about, one case that had haunted the department for years. Lila Calloway. I want next of kin notified immediately, Dana said. The deputy nodded. Already on it. We have an address on file for her sister, Jenna. But before he could finish, a car skidded to a stop at the newly formed roadblock. A woman jumped out. Dark hair. Eyes red from crying. Body trembling with cold and panic. Jenna. No, and please, she screamed when deputies blocked her. That's my sister. Is that my sister out there? Dana stepped forward. Miss Calloway, Jenna, I'm Sheriff Holloway. Please, let's go somewhere warm and... Is it her? Jenna choked. Dana swallowed. Yes. Jenna collapsed into a sound that did not belong in the air. It was too raw, too deep, too human. But when she finally lifted her head, tears streaking down her face, her next words stopped Dana cold. I got a voicemail from her this morning. She was alive. Dana stiffened. A voicemail? She was running. She said they found her. She said she didn't know where else to go. They. Jenna nodded, voice cracking. She said she was hunted. The recorder's contents, 10:11 a.m. Inside the sheriff's office, a small meeting room held only 4 people. Dana, Maren, Elias, and Jenna, pale and shaking, clutching tissues in one hand. On the table sat the recorder. Repaired. Ready to play. Before we start, Dana said quietly, Jenna, this might be difficult. I don't care, she whispered. Play it. Dana pressed the button. Static. Silence. Crackling. Then a voice. A man's voice. Steady. Cold. I have sinned, he began. Jenna's hands flew to her mouth. The man continued. I took her. Kept her. I watched her beg and scream and pray. And now I've lost control of her. She knows the truth. She knows what I did. She knows who I am. Dana's thumb hovered over the pause button. Maren whispered, horrified, This isn't Lila's voice. It wasn't. It was her killer's. He kept talking. I never meant for it to go this far. But once you bury one secret, Others come crawling out. 1 becomes 2. 2 becomes 5. And soon, there's only one way to keep them quiet. The room felt smaller, colder, more suffocating. I didn't want to kill her, the voice said. But I had no choice. Not after what she saw. Jenna's tears streamed silently down her face. The final line, spoken with chilling calm. I know you will find her. And when you do, you'll know exactly where to look for the rest. Dana froze. The rest, she whispered. The recording ended. Silence swallowed the room. Jenna looked up slowly. He's killed before. Dana nodded. And I think, she said quietly, he's telling us where to find the other bodies. The world outside the sheriff's office seemed too normal for what Jenna Calloway had just heard. People drove slowly through the snowy streets. A teenage boy shoveled the sidewalk in front of the hardware store. A dog barked somewhere in the distance. Life continued with indifferent calm. But inside the small interrogation room, Jenna's world was splitting open. Her sister wasn't just found dead. She had been held. She had been hunted. She had been recorded by the man who killed her. And now that man had implied something much darker. Lila wasn't his first victim. Sheriff Dana Holloway folded her hands on the table, voice steady but heavy. Jenna, I need you to tell me everything. Anything that might connect to this. Jenna stared at the scratched tabletop, breath trembling. She felt hollow, like her soul had been scooped out and replaced with cold panic. I don't know what's relevant, she said. Everything? Nothing? I don't even know anymore. That's okay, Dana said gently. Start with the voicemail. Jenna nodded, wiped her face, and hit play again on her phone. Lila's terrified whisper filled the room once more. Please? I'm so sorry. I didn't know where else to go. Scream. A man shouting. Then nothing. Jenna shut it off with a shaky exhale. I tried calling back. I tried calling a dozen times. But she didn't answer. I didn't know where she was. And then I saw the news alert. Dana nodded. We checked the timestamp. The message was left at 3:14 a.m. That means Lila was alive hours before she was placed on the lake. Placed? Jenna whispered. So she didn't walk there? No. She was carried. Staged. Jenna felt sick. Dana leaned forward. Jenna, why would Lila call you after all these years? What changed? I don't know. Jenna burst out. She disappeared. No note. No explanation. Everyone assumed she ran away. The police didn't investigate long. They said no signs of foul play. Dana's expression darkened. I wasn't sheriff then, but I read the old file. The previous investigators, they dismissed things too quickly. You think she didn't run away? No, Dana sighed. I think she was taken. A cold silence fell. Then Elias Grant, the ranger who found Lila, knocked lightly and stepped inside. Sheriff, forensics finished scanning her clothes. Dana turned. And? They found something in her coat lining. Jenna's spine straightened. Found what? Elias held up a small evidence bag. Inside, a scrap of thin paper. Edges torn. Creased from being hidden. A handwritten note. Dana frowned. Where was that? Sewn behind the inner pocket. He hesitated. Someone stitched it in with fishing line. Dana opened the bag and carefully unfolded the paper. The handwriting was shaky, rushed, but unmistakably a woman's. If you find me, follow the pines. Look for the red tape. I hid what I could. Jenna's breath caught. That's Lila's handwriting. You're sure? I'm positive. Dana studied the message. She knew she might not escape. She left instructions. Elias nodded. The line about follow the pines could mean the eastern ridge. Only place around here thick with old-growth pines. And hikers sometimes mark trees with red tape there. Dana exhaled slowly. We're going. Jenna stood abruptly. I'm coming too. Dana shook her head. Jenna, you're not leaving me behind. Her voice cracked. She called me. She warned me. She left that note for someone. Maybe for me. I'm going. Dana opened her mouth to argue, then saw the fire in Jenna's eyes. This wasn't a request. This was a sister who had just found out her twin half of the world was murdered. Dana nodded reluctantly. Fine. But you stay with me at all times. Elias grabbed his coat. Weather's turning soon. If she left something out there, we need to find it before the snow covers it. And just like that, the three of them stepped into the cold. The pines, 2 hours later. Snow clung to the branches like thick white paintbrush strokes. The forest was vast, towering pines stretching endlessly in every direction. The wind cut through the canopy in long, low whistles. Jenna shivered despite the heavy jacket she borrowed from the sheriff's office. Her boots crunched loudly on the icy ground. Elias walked in front, scanning the trees with a ranger's trained eye. Dana followed beside Jenna, her hand near her holster, eyes sharp. The forest felt wrong. Too quiet, too still. You okay? Dana murmured. No, Jenna whispered. But I have to do this. She kept replaying the voicemail in her head. They found me, Jenna. Please, don't let them. What did she mean? They? Jenna asked softly. Dana shook her head. Don't know yet. But the recording we found, there was only one voice. A man. What if others were involved? Jenna whispered. Dana didn't answer. But her silence was answer enough. After nearly 40 minutes of walking, Elias raised a hand. Hold up. He pointed to a tree trunk 20 yards ahead. Wrapped around it, fluttering in the wind, a strip of red plastic tape. Jenna gasped. Oh my God. They approached cautiously. The tape wasn't old. Not weathered. Not torn. Fresh. Dana snapped a photo. Lila marked this. Elias scanned the area. There could be more. They moved slowly now, eyes searching every tree. Another tape. Then another. A trail. A breadcrumb path left by a dying woman. The pines grew thicker, the air colder. The snow deepened, crunching under their weight. They reached a small clearing. Elias stopped abruptly. Dana froze. Jenna's breath hitched. Because in the center of the clearing was a mound of disturbed snow. Not natural snow. Snow that had been dug. Replaced. Elias knelt and brushed away the surface. A corner of a tarp emerged. Dana nodded grimly. Help me. He pulled again. More tarp showed. Jenna covered her mouth. Something lay beneath. Elias removed the last of the snow and peeled back the plastic. Inside was a rusted metal box. Padlocked. Weather-stained. Hidden here God knows how long. Dana felt the blood drain from her face. Jenna, she said quietly, you might want to step back. No, Jenna whispered. I'm staying. Dana handed Elias a crowbar from his pack. It took nearly a minute, but the lock snapped open with a sharp crack. Dana lifted the lid. Slowly. Inside the metal box was a stack of items, carefully packed, wrapped in old cloth. A driver's license. Jewelry. A leather wallet. 2 broken cell phones. A crushed pair of glasses. A set of keys. And at the very bottom, a small, blood-stained notebook. Dana's heart thundered. These are missing person belongings, she murmured. These names, I recognize some of these names. Elias exhaled shakily. This is a trophy box. Jenna felt the world tilt around her. How many things are in there? She whispered. Too many, Dana said. Elias's voice was low, horrified. These are victims. Trophies. Souvenirs. Tokens taken from the dead. Jenna felt faint. And look at this. Dana pulled out a driver's license near the top. A woman, age 34. Smiling in her photo. Missing since 2013. Jesus Christ, Dana whispered. This was the resting place of a serial killer's past. Lila had found this. Hidden it. Marked the way for someone to discover it, knowing it would cost her life. Jenna wiped tears with a trembling hand. She knew he was going to kill her. Dana nodded slowly. And she hid evidence anyway. Elias swallowed. She was trying to bring him down. Jenna whispered, she died trying to save others. Dana gently lifted the blood-stained notebook. I think this is hers, she said softly. Jenna moved closer, breath unsteady. Open it. Dana did. The first page was messy, jagged handwriting, lines slanting unevenly. A journal entry. He keeps me in the cellar. He comes at night. He talks to me like I'm someone else. I've seen him bury things. I've seen his face when he thinks no one is watching. Jenna's heart hammered so loudly she thought it might break. Another line. If anyone finds this, please, follow the pines. I'm leaving everything I know. Everything he told me. Everything he hid. Dana whispered, this confirms it. She escaped. Found this place. Wrote this. And hid it. Jenna touched the page gently, as if touching her sister's hand. Lila. Elias stood suddenly. Sheriff. His voice was strange. Uneasy. Dana turned. What is it? Elias pointed to the tree line. At something nailed to a trunk. They approached slowly. It was a Polaroid photograph. Weatherproof. Pinned to the bark with a rusted nail. The picture showed a cabin. A small, isolated hunting cabin. And in front of it, a man. The image was grainy, but unmistakable. Tall, dark hair. Wearing winter gear. Face stern, almost expressionless. Jenna's knees went weak. That's him, she whispered. That's the voice on the recorder. Dana's stomach dropped. Elias stared. Why would he leave this here? Dana's eyes hardened. He didn't leave it. What? Lila did, she said. She wanted us to find him. Jenna grabbed Dana's arm, panic rising. We go there. We have to go there. That's where he kept her. Dana nodded grimly. Yes, but we aren't going alone. She pulled out her radio. This is Sheriff Holloway. I need backup. We found a stash of evidence and a location. Send units to Grid 7, coordinates. The radio crackled. Static. A voice. A low, male voice. Stop looking. Dana froze. Jenna's blood ran cold. The voice continued. You don't understand what you're doing. You don't understand who you're dealing with. Dana slowly raised the radio. Identify yourself. Silence. Turn back, or I'll make you wish you had. The transmission cut. Elias whispered, Jesus Christ, he's watching us. Dana scanned the tree line, hand on her weapon. Back to the vehicles, she ordered. Now. Jenna hesitated only a second before following. The forest no longer felt cold. It felt alive. Watching. Listening. Waiting. They walked faster. Then faster. Then nearly running. Because someone else was out there. Someone who had killed before. Someone who had just warned them to stop. But the sheriff whispered to herself as she gripped the bloody notebook. The snow fell in thicker sheets as Sheriff Dana Holloway, Jenna Calloway, and Ranger Elias Grant returned to the vehicles. The forest felt like a living thing now, dark, vast, and holding secrets older and colder than any of them wanted to believe. Jenna's hands shook as she buckled into the sheriff's truck. Not from cold. From rage. From grief. From the feeling of her sister's voice still echoing in her ear. Please, don't let them. He had taken everything from Lila. Jenna wouldn't let him keep anything else. Dana started the engine, jaw clenched tight. Elias took the passenger seat, eyes darting through the falling snow. Do we go straight to the cabin? Jen asked. Not without backup, Dana said firmly. He heard our radio. That means he's close. We need support before we approach. But what if he leaves? Jenna demanded. What if he runs? What if he destroys evidence? He's not running, Dana said darkly. Men like him don't run. They thread their traps carefully and expect people to fall into them. Jenna shivered, imagining the Polaroid of the cabin nailed to the tree, the silent man standing before it as if inviting them, or warning them. Elias exhaled slowly. Sheriff, we need a plan. We get the coordinates from the Polaroid, Dana said. Then we wait for backup. Then we go in. Cautiously. Jenna clenched her fists. I'm going with you. Dana turned slightly toward her. I'm not leaving you behind. Jenna blinked. You're letting me come? You know your sister better than anyone. You'll recognize things we won't. But you follow my lead. No exceptions. Jenna nodded solemnly. The truck rolled through the snowy road, forest passing like a blur of black lines. But then, a figure stepped out into the middle of the road. Dana slammed the brakes. The vehicle skidded to a hard stop, the headlights flooding over the shape ahead. Jenna gasped. Elias froze. Dana reached for her gun. Standing in the beam of the lights, a man, covered in snow, head lowered, clothes tattered. He looked half dead, his skin pale and bruised. Jenna grabbed Dana's arm. That's not him. This guy's hurt. Dana unbuckled. Stay in the truck. She stepped out cautiously, gun drawn, boots crunching through the icy gravel. Sir, she called. Can you hear me? The man lifted his head with effort. His eyes were red-rimmed, swollen, frightened. He whispered something, but she couldn't hear. Dana stepped closer. It's okay. I'm a sheriff. Are you injured? He opened his mouth, and a burst of foggy breath came out, carrying trembling words. He's still there. Dana's brow furrowed. Who's still where? The man sagged as his knees buckled. Dana rushed forward and caught him under the arm. He collapsed into her, trembling violently. Elias dashed out and helped her lift him. They got him into the back seat beside Jenna. Sir, can you tell us your name? Dana asked gently. He convulsed once, teeth chattering. Tom, he whispered. Tom Riley. Jenna's eyes widened. Oh my God. Dana turned sharply. You know him? Jenna swallowed hard. He went missing 3 months ago. Everyone thought he was dead. Tom's eyes filled with tears. He kept me, he whispered. Dana froze. Jenna's blood ran cold. Elias slowly sank into the passenger seat, shock settling over his face. Tom clutched Jenna's sleeve weakly. Your sister, she tried to help me. Jenna's heart slammed against her ribs. Tom looked at her with eyes full of horror and regret. She died because of me. No, Jenna whispered fiercely. No, Tom, that's not your fault. But Tom only shook his head, collapsing back into the seat as exhaustion overtook him. He muttered something softly. A whisper, barely audible. Jenna leaned in. Tom? What did you say? Tom's eyes fluttered open for half a second. His lips parted. He's not alone. The medical station. 15 minutes later, they pulled into the small mountain medical outpost. Nurses rushed out with a stretcher as Dana carried Tom inside. Jenna stood by, trembling. She wasn't sure her legs would keep holding her. Tom Riley, long presumed dead, had just stumbled into their path like a ghost returning to deliver a final message. And that message was terrifying. Dana came back out, rubbing her temples. Doc says he's dehydrated. Frostbitten. Probably starved. He's lucky he made it out alive. Elias nodded grimly. But he didn't escape by accident. He walked straight into our path. He was looking for someone, Dana said. And I think it was us. Jenna swallowed. What did he mean? He's not alone? Dana hesitated. I don't know, she said. But we need to find out. Tom's testimony. 1 hour later, Tom was stabilized. Still pale. Still trembling. But coherent. Dana, Jenna, and Elias sat around his hospital bed as he sipped warm broth. Tom stared at the ceiling for a long, silent moment. Then he spoke. It wasn't just one man, he whispered. There were 3. Jenna inhaled sharply. Dana leaned in. 3 captors? Tom nodded. Brothers. Or something like brothers. They called themselves family. Jenna's stomach twisted. What did they look like? Tom's eyes filled with dread. One tall. One heavy. One quiet. The quiet one. He's the one who watches. Dana exchanged a look with Elias. Lila, Jenna whispered. She was held by all 3? Tom swallowed. She talked to me. When they weren't around. She said she'd been there longer than she could remember. Jenna felt tears burning. She told me she would escape if it killed her. Jenna felt the world blur. Tom continued, voice cracking. She was smart. Smarter than them. She hid things. Took notes. Stole keys. Memorized routines. I think she escaped twice before. They caught her, punished her. Jenna covered her mouth as tears fell. Tom's throat tightened. But the third time, she didn't run for herself. He looked at Jenna. She ran for you. Jenna sobbed silently. Tom wiped his eyes. She said your name every night, like it kept her alive. Dana's hand shook as she wrote notes. Tom, she said gently, is the cabin in the Polaroid where they held you? Tom nodded. And is that where the others are? His lips trembled. Tom whispered, no. The air seemed to freeze. Dana leaned closer. Then where? Tom looked straight at her. Straight through her. They have an underground place. Jenna's heart stopped. Tom's voice dropped to a broken whisper. A basement under the cabin. Where the real things happen. The decision. When they left the medical bay, Dana didn't speak. Not for a long time. Snow thickened outside the windows, blowing sideways as winds cut through the valley. Elias stood with his arms crossed tightly, staring down at the ground. Jenna finally broke the silence. We have to go. Dana closed her eyes. We can't go in blind. Not now. Not with more than one suspect. Not with an entire underground structure. Jenna grabbed her arm. He killed my sister. Dana turned sharply. And I'm trying to prevent him from killing you. Jenna swallowed. Dana softened her voice. I know what this is costing you. I know what you want to do. But if we go without a plan, he'll bury all of us under that cabin. Elias nodded. We need backup. State police. Maybe even federal involvement. Jenna stepped back, shaking. Every minute we wait, he could be destroying the evidence Lila died trying to leave behind. Dana didn't argue. Couldn't. Because Jenna was right. Dana looked toward the window, snow swirling violently outside. He won't destroy evidence, she said finally. Men like this, they keep everything. They worship it. Elias exhaled. So what do we do? Dana turned to them. We move at dawn. Jenna's voice cracked. Dawn? Why not now? Because the storm is worsening, Dana said. Visibility is dropping. If we go now, he'll hear us coming long before we reach him. Dawn gives us enough light and enough surprise. Jenna's jaw clenched. Dana placed a hand on her shoulder. We'll get him, she promised. We'll finish what Lila started. Jenna nodded, tears streaking her cheeks. Then I want to be there. Dana held her gaze. You will be. The longest night. Jenna lay awake in the sheriff's station cot, staring at the ceiling as snow hammered the windows. Every sound felt ominous. Every shadow felt like eyes watching. Every breath felt like something breathing beside her. She clutched Lila's blood-stained notebook to her chest, flipping through its pages over and over again. Words blurred from tears. Fragments stood out. He comes at night. They whisper through the floorboards. There's a room below the basement. He thinks I'm her. I have to warn Jenna. I'm so close. Jenna pressed the notebook to her forehead and cried silently, shaking. At 3:18 a.m., she jolted upright. A sound echoed in the hallway outside. Footsteps. Slow. Deliberate. Not Dana's. Not Elias's. Her heart slammed. The footsteps passed her door. A whisper. Right outside. You shouldn't have come back, Jenna. Her blood turned to ice. She froze in the cot, unable to move. The doorknob turned. Twice. Slowly. Then stopped. Silence. Bootsteps walking away. Jenna trembled violently, clutching the knife Dana had given her for protection. Minutes passed. Hours? She didn't know. When dawn finally bled pale blue into the windows, Jenna stumbled into the main office where Dana and Elias were gearing up. Dana took one look at Jenna's face and stiffened. What happened? Jenna's voice shook. He was here. Elias froze. What? Jenna's hands trembled uncontrollably. He said my name. Dana grabbed her shoulders. Who? Jenna swallowed painfully. The quiet one, she whispered. The one Tom talked about. Dana's face drained of color. Elias stared towards the hallway. He found us, he breathed. No, Dana said. She grabbed her gear. eyes blazing with fury and fear. "He's waiting for us." Riley hadn't spoken for the entire 10-minute drive back to her motel, not even when Detective Shaw offered water, not even when he asked if she wanted someone from the department to escort her inside. She just stared through the windshield, pale and hollow, like she'd left part of herself in that evidence room. When he pulled up in front of her door, she finally whispered, "You're coming back, right? Tomorrow morning?" "7 sharp, Shaw said. "We'll go through the rest of the boxes and see what the hell Sergeant Bannerman was hiding." She nodded once, got out, and closed the door gently, almost respectfully, like she didn't want to disturb the night. Shaw waited until she disappeared inside before he let his head fall forward against the steering wheel. Those tapes. The ones Bannerman had copied quietly. The ones no one logged. The ones where a man in a maintenance uniform was dragging 2 unconscious students down the East Corridor on January 14th. The ones where a janitor, Thomas Reed, was later shown leaving the same corridor, alone, calm, and glancing straight into the camera, as if he knew someone, someday, would find him there. Someone. Maybe he'd even known it would be Riley. Shaw swallowed hard and restarted the engine. Tomorrow, everything was going to change. The next morning, 6:59 a.m. Shaw stood outside the station, coffee steaming in one hand, eyes scanning the road. 6:59. He knew Riley. She'd be exactly. A small silver sedan rolled into the parking lot and braked to a crisp stop at the curb. "On time," he muttered. Riley got out fast, dressed in jeans and a black hoodie. Her hair was pulled back, her face sharper, more awake, but no less haunted. "You sleep?" Shaw asked. She shook her head. "No. You?" "Not really." "Good," she said. "Let's get started." There was something different about her, some kind of resolve that hadn't been there before. As if she'd made a decision in the dark. As if she'd realized she wasn't just chasing a mystery. She was chasing someone. The archive room. At 7:05 a.m., Shaw unlocked the archive room door. Riley stopped at the threshold. "What?" Shaw asked. She pointed at the doorframe. "Yesterday, that hinge was clean. Someone opened this last night." Shaw checked, she was right. The thin line of dust he had noticed yesterday on the lower hinge was wiped. Someone had been inside. He drew a breath. Then he unlocked the door and pushed it open. Nothing looked disturbed. The metal shelves, the labeled boxes, even Bannerman's secret stack in the back. But Riley whispered, "People like this don't break in to take things. They break in to make sure we don't find something." She stepped inside and scanned the boxes. Shaw reached for the old analog tape player, the one they'd used yesterday, but when he saw the slot, his blood ran cold. The tape inside wasn't the same one they'd paused last night. "This isn't our tape," he said. Riley's head snapped around. "What?" Shaw held it up. The label on the videotape read, "Janitorial, West Wing, February 19th. Completely different. "Our tape was from January 14th, Riley said. "Somebody switched them." "And knew exactly which one to replace," Shaw agreed. He opened Bannerman's private box. 2 tapes were missing. Not borrowed. Not misplaced. Gone. Riley's jaw tightened. "We watched them yesterday. That man, Thomas Reed, he must be terrified someone found footage of him." Shaw looked up. "Riley, the timestamp on those tapes? They were from 2 months before your friends disappeared." She nodded slowly. "I know. That's why he kept them. The interview log that shouldn't exist." Riley grabbed another box and pulled out several file folders. They were old, yellowed, worn at the edges from years of handling and hiding. Most of them were routine incident reports. But then Riley froze. "Shaw, read this." He took the folder and scanned the first page. Interview summary, Thomas Reed. Conducted by Bannerman. Date, February 21st. Shaw blinked. "There's no copy of this in the digital system." "There never was," Riley said. "Bannerman interviewed him off the books." Sure. Subject reports hearing scratching noises in East Wing late at night. Believed to be pranked by students. Claims he discovered girls leaving a chemistry lab unsupervised. Claims he reprimanded them and sent them back to dorms. Subject agitated. Requests transfer. Declined. Girls. Shaw murmured. Riley grabbed the second page and read aloud. Names provided: Owens, P. Carter, Arthur, King. Riley froze. Shaw felt the bottom drop out of his stomach. Riley whispered, "Those were the girls who disappeared." Shaw exhaled slowly. And he told Bannerman he saw them that same night. The same hallway. The same wing. The same timestamp as the missing footage. "This means Reed lied," Riley said. "They never made it back to the dorms." Shaw nodded. And Bannerman knew. The decision. Riley stood abruptly, pacing the length of the room. "Reed worked nights," she said. "He had access to every locked room. Every storage closet. Every boiler space. He could have taken them anywhere." Shaw pinched the bridge of his nose. "We need to locate him. But before we do, we need to understand exactly what those missing tapes showed." Riley steeled herself. "Then we watch whatever is left." Shaw hesitated. "Riley, what we saw yesterday was already—" "I'm not afraid of the truth anymore," she cut in. "You should be." Riley blinked. "What?" Shaw pointed at the center shelf. "One of Bannerman's boxes is missing." They both turned toward the open door. Someone had been inside this room while they were here. Riley whispered, "They're watching us." The remaining tapes. There were still 3 unlabeled tapes in Bannerman's secret box. Riley picked one up. 0203, she read off the timestamp on the film reel. Shaw connected the tape player to the small TV. "Ready?" he asked. "No," Riley said. "Play it." The tape began. Static. Then a hallway. Dim, grainy. Silent. A sign on the wall flashed in the flickering fluorescent light. "East Lab Wing. Authorized access only." Riley leaned forward. The camera angle was fixed on the long corridor, the same place Reed had been caught dragging bodies in the missing footage. At first nothing happened. Then, at 1:22 a.m., a figure appeared. Not dragging anyone. Not carrying anything. Just walking. Thomas Reed. Riley recognized him instantly from the tape yesterday. The slow gait. The way he kept one hand in his pocket. The way he looked up at the camera as if he was checking whether the lens was on. "What is he holding?" Riley whispered. Shaw squinted. "Looks like a key ring?" Reed stopped at a door in the middle of the hallway. A storage closet. But instead of unlocking it, he dropped to his knees and pried at the bottom grate. "What is he doing?" Riley murmured. Reed unscrewed the vent panel and set it aside. Then he crawled halfway into the duct. Half of his body disappeared inside. His legs kicked once against the wall, then stilled. Riley whispered, "Did he just go into the vents?" Shaw didn't answer. A moment later, Reed backed out of the duct. His shirt was coated in dust. His shoulders shook. He looked straight into the camera. His mouth moved. Riley leaned so close her forehead nearly touched the screen. "What is he saying?" she whispered. Shaw replayed the last few seconds and turned up the volume. Static. Buzzing. Then faint audio. Reed whispered, "3 is done." Riley's skin turned to ice. The screen cut to black. The second tape. "We're watching the next one," Riley said before Shaw could stop her. She loaded the second tape, February 10th. Again the same hallway. This time the timestamp was 3:08 a.m. A shape crawled across the floor. Not walking. Crawling. Riley's breath hitched. It was a girl. One of the missing girls. Her name came out of Riley's mouth before she realized she'd spoken. Leah. Her knees were bloody. Her hair was torn out in clumps. She was dragging herself toward the camera, one hand reaching forward, scraping the tile. "Oh my God," Riley breathed. Shaw leaned forward, horrified. Leah collapsed halfway down the hall, chest heaving. She turned her head. Her face. Riley covered her mouth with both hands. Her left eye was swollen shut. Her cheek was torn. Her lips cracked, bleeding. She looked straight into the camera. Her lips formed a single word. The microphone picked it up, faint but distinct. "Help." Riley started crying silently. On the screen, Leah crawled another foot. She was yanked backward. Off camera. Her nails scraped across the tile, leaving red streaks. The screen cut to black. Riley folded forward, hands shaking uncontrollably. Shaw shut off the TV. "Riley," he said softly, "we don't have to keep going." Riley lifted her face. Tears streamed down, but her voice was steel. "Yes, we do." The third tape, the one that should have been destroyed. Riley slid the third tape into the player. No timestamp, just static. A single room appeared. A concrete floor. A drain in the center. A metal door behind the camera. A folding chair sat in the middle. And someone was tied to it. Riley felt her stomach flip. It was Leah again. Barely conscious. Bruised from head to toe. A new voice spoke. Not Reed's. A younger voice. Shaw stiffened. Riley felt dread seep into her bones. The figure stepped into view. Black gloves. Boots. A dark sweater. Face never shown. He held a small camera in one hand, the handheld kind sold in campus shops. He crouched in front of Leah and lifted her chin. "Tell them," he said softly. "Tell them what happens when you break rules." Leah's voice was barely a whisper. "Please, you know the truth," the voice said. "You know what you saw in the lab. What you weren't supposed to see." He stood, turned to face the wall camera, and said, "This campus belongs to more than students." Riley's heart stopped. Shaw whispered, "Is that?" Riley finished for him. Someone else was helping Reed. The moment that changes everything. The tape cut again. This time the hallway returned. The crawl space Reed had entered before. A shadow moved inside the vent. A hand emerged. Then an arm. Then Reed crawled out backwards, dragging something behind him. A blanket. Wrapped around something heavy. Something shaped like a... Riley turned away, gagging. Shaw paused the tape. "Riley." She wiped her face with the sleeve of her hoodie. "We're done here," she choked. "We go find Reed." "Riley, we can't just. We're doing it. Today." Shaw hesitated, but he saw it in her eyes. The girl who had once been afraid of answers was gone. The woman in front of him was something else. Determined. Relentless. And ready. "Okay," Shaw said. "But we're doing it by the book. We're pulling his address. And we're showing up with backup." Riley nodded once. Her voice was low, steady, terrifyingly calm. "Good." She grabbed her jacket, turned off the lights, and walked toward the door. "Because if Reed took Leah," she said quietly, "he's not just a witness." She looked Shaw dead in the eyes. "He's a killer." Detective Shaw did not like the address that popped up when he typed Thomas Reed into the database. Riley read it over his shoulder. Apartment 3B. Blue Oaks Court. Shaw nodded grimly. Better known as Blue Door Apartments. Isolated. Maintenance complaints every month. Poor lighting. No security cameras. Riley swallowed. He chose that on purpose. "Yeah," Shaw said. "And if Bannerman really was covering for him, then Reed had even more freedom than we thought." Shaw printed the address and folded the page into his jacket pocket. "Ready?" he asked. Riley grabbed her backpack. "I've been ready since the moment Leah whispered, 'Help.'" The drive to Blue Oaks Court. Shaw drove. Riley stared out the passenger window, watching brittle winter trees streak past. The sky was low and gray, almost metallic, threatening snow. She didn't speak for 10 minutes. Finally, she said quietly, "I used to walk past the janitor's office at Summit Ridge twice a day. Reed always kept his door half open. I thought he was just a tired old guy." Shaw kept his hands tight on the wheel. Most predators hide in plain sight. Riley's voice lowered. "Do you think he acted alone? Whoever was on that tape." His voice. Shaw cut her off gently. "We don't jump ahead. First we find Reed. Then we see what he knows." Riley nodded, though her jaw stayed clenched. She wasn't hoping to find Reed. She was preparing to confront him. Blue Door Apartments. The building looked worse than the photos in police reports. The paint was peeling. The gutters sagged. The 3 on 3B had fallen off and now lay on the ground near the stairs like a forgotten tooth. Riley and Shaw climbed the rusted metal steps. Halfway up, Riley froze. What? Shaw asked quietly. Riley pointed. The third step had fresh mud smeared on it. Someone had come up here recently. Very recently. Riley whispered, "He's home." Shaw placed a gentle but firm hand on her shoulder. "You stay behind me. No matter what." She nodded once. His knuckles rapped 3 times on the door. Thud thud thud. No answer. He tried again. "Thomas Reed. Police." Silence. Shaw drew his gun. Riley stepped back. He tried the knob. Unlocked. Shaw tensed. "That's not normal." Riley whispered, "Nothing about Reed is normal." Shaw slowly pushed the door open. Inside 3B. The first thing they noticed was the smell. Not rot. Not blood. Chemicals. Bleach. So strong it stung Riley's eyes. The living room was small, cramped, and stripped bare. No photos. No decorations. Just a sagging couch, a TV that looked like it hadn't been turned on in years, and a table with a single coffee mug sitting on it. Riley walked toward the kitchen. "Shaw." He followed her gaze. On the counter sat a row of plastic bottles, industrial-grade cleaning agents, heavy-duty solvents. Same brand the school used. Shaw whispered, "He took supplies home." Riley shook her head. "No. These are new." Shaw frowned. "What do you mean?" Riley pointed at the manufacturing dates printed on the base of the bottles. "All from last month." "He hasn't worked at Summit Ridge since the investigation reopened," Shaw said. "How did he?" The thought clicked for both of them. Reed still had access somewhere. Still had keys. Still had help. The note on the table. Riley noticed something tucked under the coffee mug. A folded paper, edges tattered, as if handled often. Her heart pounded as she pulled it free. Shaw leaned in as she unfolded it. A simple message, handwritten in uneven block letters. "Some things beneath the school should stay buried." Somehow, Shaw's eyes darkened. Riley clenched the paper in her fist. "This isn't a warning." Shaw nodded. "It's a threat." "And he left the door unlocked," Riley whispered. "He wanted someone to come in." As if on cue. A loud clack echoed from the back hallway. Both spun toward it. Shaw raised his gun. "Stay behind me." But Riley whispered, "That came from the bathroom." "The bathroom." Shaw pushed open the bathroom door with his foot. Empty. But the shower curtain was drawn. Riley's breath hitched. They both stared at it. Shaw stepped forward slowly. He hooked 2 fingers into the curtain and yanked it aside. Empty. But the drain was stained with something dark. Not blood. Not dirt. Shaw crouched. "Grease," he said. "Industrial grease." Riley blinked. "From what?" Shaw didn't answer. He just looked up suddenly, eyes sharp. "Basement boiler rooms use this kind of grease." Riley whispered, "Reed was in the maintenance tunnels last night." The closet. A tiny scraping noise came from the hall closet. So, barely audible. Shaw stood slowly and nodded to Riley. He gripped the closet knob. "1, he whispered. Riley swallowed. 2. She braced. 3. He yanked the door open, gun raised. A man fell out. Riley screamed and stumbled back as the limp body crumpled at Shaw's feet. Shaw knelt instantly, checking the neck, the jaw, the pulse. His jaw tightened. "He's alive." Riley dropped to her knees beside them. The man was gagged, hands tied, eyes swollen shut. Shaw pulled off the duct tape gag. The man coughed violently. Shaw spoke gently. "Sir, can you hear me?" "Name?" The man wheezed. Eric." "Eric what?" "Maintenance. Summit Ridge." Riley's eyes widened. "He isn't Reed. Reed's the janitor. This man, he's a maintenance tech." Shaw nodded grimly. Reed had likely kidnapped him. "For what?" Shaw lifted Vaughn's chin. "Who did this?" "Reed." Vaughn shook his head weakly. "No, also not Reed." Riley frowned. "Then who?" Vaughn's breath rattled. "The other one." Riley felt her blood run cold. "What other one?" Vaughn's lips trembled. "The black gloves," he said. "You?" He pointed shakily at Riley. "You were asking too many questions." Shaw and Riley locked eyes. Someone else was involved. Someone who knew Riley by name. Vaughn continued, voice cracking. I heard them talking. They said the Blue Door apartment was the bait. Riley whispered, this was a trap. Vaughn nodded weakly. He said, if you came, they'd take you too. Shaw stiffened. Riley felt her stomach twist. They're watching this place, Shaw said. We need to get out. Now. The back exit. Shaw carried Vaughn's weight over his shoulder. Riley grabbed the chemical bottles. They needed physical evidence. They headed for the door. But when Shaw opened it, he froze. Footprints. Fresh, wet footprints. Leading toward the door. And then away. Riley whispered, someone was standing right outside. Shaw lowered his voice. He's here. Riley's pulse hammered in her ears. Move, Shaw ordered. Back exit. Now. They slipped into the stairwell. It smelled of mildew and cigarette smoke. Halfway down the stairs, Riley stopped dead. Someone had scratched into the wall. 3 girls. 3 tapes. 1 left. Shaw pulled her forward, voice urgent. We're not safe here. They burst through the bottom door into the alley behind the building. Cold air slapped their faces. Shaw turned to Riley. Get to the car. Call EMS. Call backup. Riley nodded and sprinted toward the unmarked sedan. But as she reached for the door handle, a voice spoke behind her. So familiar. From the tape. You shouldn't have come here, Riley. Riley froze. Shaw spun around, drawing his weapon. A shadow stood behind the dumpster. A man. Only his outline visible. Black gloves. Dark sweater. Same silhouette from the tape. The man stepped forward, and Riley's stomach dropped. He was young. Late 20s at most. Sharp jaw, unreadable eyes. No mask. No attempt to hide. He smiled slightly. It's rude, he said, to look for things that were buried. Shaw aimed his gun. Hands where I can see them. Now. The man raised them slowly, casually. But his eyes stayed locked on Riley. You saw the tape, he said softly. So you know what happens next. Riley backed up. You hurt Leah. You killed them. He tilted his head. No, he said calmly. Reed killed them. Riley blinked. What? But I showed him how. Shaw stepped forward, gun unwavering. On the ground. The man didn't move. He whispered, Reed is just a tool. I'm the one you should be afraid of. Riley's breath hitched. Shaw tightened his grip. The man slowly reached into his pocket. Shaw shouted, Freeze. But the man didn't freeze. He pulled out a small remote. He clicked it once. The entire building behind them shook. Riley screamed, Get down. Shaw tackled her behind the car. A deafening boom ripped through the air as flames burst from the stairwell windows. Vaughn was still inside. Riley clamped her hands over her ears. Shaw shouted over the roar, Where is Reed? The man smiled through the smoke. Closer than you think. Then he turned and sprinted into the alley. Shaw jumped to his feet. Stay here. Riley shouted, Shaw, wait. But he was already chasing the man. Riley stood trembling beside the burning building. She stared at the alley where the man vanished. He'd said, Closer than you think. Riley whispered, He's not working with Reed. Her voice shook. He's controlling him. And the worst part, she knew what came next. If there were 3 tapes showing 3 girls, there would be a 4th. The storm that had been threatening all morning finally broke open above Crestwood as Detective Aria Lane steered her SUV down the narrowing dirt road leading away from the burned cabin. Rain hammered the windshield like gravel, each drop slicing the reflection of the mountains into shards. Neither she nor Detective Mason Hale spoke for several minutes. The silence wasn't merely heavy, it was suffocating. They had just unearthed their first truly solid lead, and yet the weight of it felt more like a warning than a victory. In that cabin, preserved for 2 decades and then destroyed by fire only hours before they arrived, they had found the impossible, a Polaroid photo showing the face of Charlotte Mayweather, taken after her supposed suicide in 2005. The tape recorder they recovered, partially melted but not entirely destroyed, still held fragments of a man's voice. A whisper disguised as static. Someone was playing with them. Someone who had been doing this for years. Aria's fingers tightened around the steering wheel. The rain blurred the world beyond recognition, but she wasn't looking at the road. Her mind was racing backward, through the case files, through the interviews, through the places where this story didn't merely twist, but snapped. Charlotte was alive after the night she disappeared, Aria finally said, forcing the words out. Which means everything we know about the original investigation is wrong. Mason leaned back, rubbing his temple with a slow, pained grimace. Or someone wanted us to think she was alive. Either way, whoever burned that cabin knew we were close. No, Aria said. They wanted us to find it. They left us just enough. Mason didn't argue, because he knew she was right. The storm grew louder as Aria pulled onto the main road. The faint glow of Crestwood's town lights flickered in the valley ahead. It was early afternoon, but under the heavy clouds it looked like midnight. Let's assume for a second the Polaroid is real, Mason said, flipping through the evidence folder on his lap. Charlotte was alive for at least, 3, maybe 4 days after the night she vanished. But that still doesn't explain why she disappeared in the first place. Or why everyone connected to the case has been dying one by one. Aria's voice trembled, not from fear, but from the unspoken suspicion growing inside her. She couldn't shake it. She had seen too many cases where the real story wasn't in the reports, but between them, in the redactions, in the pages that were missing. Mason noticed the distant look in her eyes. What is it? You're thinking something. Aria exhaled slowly. All of the victims, Griffin, Walters, Langford, even the anonymous caller from the hotline, they weren't just witnesses. They all had something in common. Mason raised a brow. Besides the case? They all changed their statements, Aria said. At least once. Some of them twice. A flash of lightning illuminated the sky, white and violent, carving the outline of the mountains as if sketching the shape of a secret. Mason froze. He hadn't realized it until Aria said the words, but she was right. Every single witness connected to Charlotte's final night had provided conflicting information at some point, timeline discrepancies, altered descriptions, things added or removed after the fact. But Aria pulled into the Crestwood Police Department parking lot but didn't turn off the engine. We're missing a piece, she whispered. A piece they all knew. Something they were afraid to tell the truth about. She looked at Mason and he looked back, both understanding at the exact same moment. Someone forced them to change their statements, Mason said. Or scared them into it, Aria added. But whoever it was, they're still here. Aria shut off the engine. The storm outside was relentless. Inside the station, they headed straight to the evidence review room. The fluorescent lights buzzed overhead, casting everything in a cold, surgical glow. Aria spread their files across the long table. Crime scene photos, aerial maps, copies of the original statements, a timeline drawn in red marker across a whiteboard. Look at these locations, Aria said. Charlotte's last confirmed sighting was at the Lakeside Motel. Griffin claimed he saw her arguing with someone behind the bar. Walters said she was crying near the old water tower. And Langford said he saw her on the frontage road at 1 in the morning, Mason added, flipping pages rapidly. But GPS logs from his truck showed he wasn't anywhere near there. So why lie? Maybe he wasn't lying, Aria said. Maybe he told the truth the first time. And then someone made him change it. Mason stared at the board for several seconds before stepping forward, tracing the map with 2 fingers. Look at this, he said. 5 witnesses. 5 different locations around town, all within a 2-mile radius. And all within the window from 11:50 p.m. to 1:10 a.m., Aria added. But if you connect them, Mason picked up a pen and began drawing lines from point to point. Aria's breath caught. Together, the 5 sightings formed a shape. A loop. A route. A path someone drove that night. Someone was moving her around town, Aria whispered. Or she was running from someone, Mason said. They stared at the shape, the looping line through Crestwood streets, like they were staring at a map of someone's guilt. Aria took a long, steady breath. Get the video archives, she said. Every traffic cam within that route. I know half of them are ancient and half probably malfunctioned, but if even one caught something... Mason was already moving, heading to the AV room with a determined stride. Arya turned back to the board, scanning it, letting the loop burn itself into her brain. 5 locations. 5 altered statements. 5 lies. No, not lies. Corrections. Forced corrections. Someone had been rewriting the story from the beginning. She pulled the Polaroid from its evidence sleeve. Charlotte's face, half hidden by shadows, stared back at her, eyes filled with fear or desperation, or perhaps one last attempt to say something no one had been willing to hear. Arya swallowed hard. Who took this photo? Before she could answer the question, Mason returned, laptop in hand, breathing heavily. Arya, he said, voice tight, you need to see this. He set the laptop on the table and opened the first file. A grainy traffic cam video from a gas station intersection, timestamped 12:07 a.m. on the night Charlotte disappeared. Cars passed through the frame. Rain streaked across the lens. And then, a dark-colored SUV rolled through the shot. Not unusual, except for what was on the passenger side. A hand, pressed against the window. A woman's hand, thin, shaking. Mason froze the frame. Arya's heart lodged itself in her throat. That's her, Arya said. Zooming, Mason muttered. The image pixelated, then refocused. The face behind the glass was blurred, but unmistakably female. Eyes wide, hair plastered to her face. A captive, or someone running out of time. We need to identify that vehicle, Arya said, fear sharp in her voice. What do we have? Make, model? Already working on it, Mason said, scrubbing through the footage. 2 minutes later, another camera caught the SUV again, this time turning down Maplewood Road, away from town. At 12:10 a.m. 3 minutes after the first sighting. Arya leaned closer. Wait. What? Maplewood Road leads to the industrial lots. The same area where Griffin claimed he saw her, Mason added. Arya didn't speak. She didn't need to. The loop they'd drawn on the board wasn't random. It was deliberate. A route someone took while transporting a terrified girl around Crestwood, moving her from place to place, ensuring multiple people saw her, but none of them would be able to tell a consistent story later. Because maybe that was the point. Confusion. Misdirection. A tapestry of contradictions woven together to bury the truth. Someone had orchestrated the entire thing. And 20 years later, that someone was killing anyone who still knew what happened. Mason played the next clip. This time, at 12:16 a.m., the SUV appeared again, driving faster, passing the old lumberyard. And in the reflection of a streetlight, Arya saw it. A dent. On the rear bumper. Well, circular. Her pulse spiked. Pause, she shouted. Mason froze the frame instantly. Arya pulled the original accident report for Charlotte's boyfriend, Tyler Grayson, the man who had been cleared of involvement because he died in a car crash 3 days after Charlotte vanished. The photos from his wrecked car showed the same type of dent, the same shape, the same placement. Arya, Mason whispered, piecing it together. Are you saying the SUV in the footage hit Tyler's car? No, Arya said, pointing at the timestamp. It dented his bumper that night, before his crash, because Tyler wasn't supposed to make it home alive. She finally said the thing they had been circling around for days. Tyler didn't crash by accident. Mason stepped back, stunned. You think someone rammed him off the road? Or forced him into the ravine, Arya said. And then they staged the skid marks. Mason stared at the screen again. So whoever was driving that SUV, they didn't just kidnap Charlotte. They killed Tyler, Arya finished. The room fell silent. Outside, thunder rolled like the voice of God dragging across the mountains. Arya looked at the board again, and for the first time since they reopened this case, she felt the shape of the truth. Not complete, not clear, but forming. Someone in Crestwood had been orchestrating this for decades. Someone careful. Someone methodical. Someone who knew how to erase trails and rewrite narratives. Someone who believed the story of Charlotte Mayweather belonged to them. Arya inhaled sharply. There's more, Mason said, pulling up one final clip. This is from the frontage road, 12:23 a.m. This camera barely works, but... The SUV reappeared, but not alone. A second vehicle followed behind it. A black pickup. Close. Tailgating. Almost hurting the SUV forward. Who the hell? Arya began. But then Mason zoomed in on the license plate. The numbers were impossible to read in the rain. But the bumper sticker wasn't. A faded blue oval. With white lettering. Crestwood Fire Department. Arya's blood ran cold. That truck, she whispered. That's the same truck volunteers used during wildfire evacuations in 2004. Mason nodded slowly. And only one person still owns one of those, he said. He didn't need to speak the name. Arya already knew it. A name she had hoped she was wrong about. A name that had been lurking at the edges of this story from the very beginning. A name tied to the fire that destroyed the cabin. A name tied to the original night Charlotte vanished. A name tied to every misdirection, every false lead, every rewritten statement, everybody. Arya closed her eyes. When she opened them, they were filled with steel. We're going to his house, she said. Mason swallowed. Tonight. Right now. Because the game was no longer hidden. The killer had stepped into the open. But so had they. And Arya knew, deep in her bones, that the next move would decide everything. Everything. The storm had only grown darker by the time detectives Arya Lane and Mason Hale left the police station. Sheets of rain lashed sideways across the windshield as Arya steered the SUV through Crestwood's winding outskirts. Each mile they crossed felt heavier than the last, as if the night itself were trying to warn them away from the truth. Mason kept glancing at the laptop balanced on his knees, replaying the last frame of the traffic cam footage. The black pickup tailing the SUV, close enough to kiss its bumper. The old Crestwood Fire Department sticker was unmistakable. Only one surviving volunteer still drove a truck from that era. Elias Rourke, age 61. Former fire volunteer. Groundskeeper at North Ridge Cemetery. One of the first responders the night Charlotte Mayweather disappeared. A man who had been interviewed and dismissed within hours of the original investigation. A man who had lived quietly on Fire Road for 20 years, with no family, no visitors, and no reason for anyone to look his way. Until now. Arya's jaw was tight, her knuckles bone-white on the steering wheel. If Rourke was following the SUV that night, then he wasn't a bystander. Mason exhaled. He was part of it. Lightning cut across the sky like a blade, illuminating the trees that lined the narrow mountain road. The storm had flooded the shoulder, making every curve treacherous. A deep silence settled over the SUV. Not dread. Not fear. Focus. The kind of razor-edge clarity that only comes when you know the next few hours might define everything you've chased, and everything you've lost, through this case. Mason finally broke the quiet. Arya, if Rourke's been doing this for 20 years, he's not just a witness. Arya didn't answer. She didn't have to. They both knew the truth. Elias Rourke was no witness. He was an architect of deception. A curator of lies. A man who lived in shadows he built with his own hands. The storm swallowed the SUV as they drove deeper into the forest. The house that should not still stand. Fire Road was barely more than a muddy path, choked with pines leaning over it like skeletal sentries. Arya slowed to a crawl, headlights cutting tunnels through the rain. Rourke's house appeared out of the darkness like something that had been forgotten by time, its wooden siding weather-beaten, the porch sagging under years of rot. A single lantern glowed inside, flickering in the front window. "He's home," Mason said, voice low. Arya parked 3 houses down behind a cluster of trees. The storm muffled their movements as they stepped out into ankle-deep mud. Mason's umbrella flipped backward in the wind before he abandoned it entirely. Arya unholstered her firearm but kept it lowered. "We go in careful. No lights unless necessary. If he's armed." "He will be," Mason said. They moved like shadows along the tree line, rain soaking their jackets, breath steaming in the cold air. Halfway up the path, Arya paused. A sound carried through the storm. A metallic clank, dragged across the floor. Slow, rhythmic, Not random. Not accidental. Inside, someone was moving something heavy. Mason gave a silent nod. Arya stepped onto the porch, water dripping from her sleeves, and pressed herself to the wall beside the door. The sound stopped. Arya exchanged a glance with Mason. Knock or breach? Her heart pulsed once. Twice. She raised 3 fingers. 3. Mason aimed. 2. Arya inhaled. She knocked. 3 sharp, deliberate raps. Silence. Footsteps approached from inside the house. Slow. Heavy. Intentional. A shadow passed behind the thin curtain in the window. Mr. Rourke, Arya called out over the storm. This is Detective Lane with Crestwood PD. We need to speak with you. The footsteps stopped. The lantern flickered. Mr. Rourke, Arya repeated, we know you're inside. A different sound came through the door, a soft creak, like old leather stretching. Then the door unlocked. Just once. And swung open. The man in the doorway. Elias Rourke stood in the doorway like a statue carved from hardship. His hair was long and matted, beard streaked with gray. His eyes, pale, washed-out blue, held no surprise. Only resignation. He said nothing. Did nothing. Just stared at them. Arya held her badge up. We need to ask you some questions regarding the night Charlotte Mayweather disappeared. Rainwater pooled around their feet. Rourke's gaze didn't move. Didn't blink. Didn't flicker. Then he stepped aside, inviting them in. Against every instinct screaming inside her, Arya walked through the doorway. Mason followed, weapon low but drawn. The house was dimly lit by a single oil lantern on a table. The air was wet, metallic, tinged with gasoline. Lumber and tools littered the counters. A half-dismantled gas generator sat open on the floor. And in the center of the living room, Arya froze. A giant corkboard covered an entire wall. Strings. Photos. Maps of Crestwood. Timelines. Every victim. Every witness. Every death. Every one of them marked with a small black X. And at the center, Charlotte Mayweather's photo. A Polaroid. Not the one they found in the cabin. Another. Her eyes hollow, lips trembling, as though begging the camera to look away. Arya's breath hitched. Rourke, what did you do? Nothing, he said, his voice coarse from years of disuse. Not what you think. Arya rounded on him. Then explain the footage. Explain the SUV you followed that night. Explain why you're on every path she took. Rourke shook his head. I didn't follow her. Then why were you behind the SUV? Mason demanded. I wasn't behind it. Rourke's jaw clenched. I was trying to get ahead of it. Arya blinked. What? Rourke stepped closer to the board, pointing to the looping route across town. You think I was part of this, he rasped. But I was the first to know something was wrong. Arya's pulse pounded in her skull. Start talking. Rourke drew in a trembling breath. It wasn't me driving that SUV. Then who was? Mason asked. Rourke swallowed like the name itself soured his tongue. Someone you should have found 20 years ago. Who? Arya shouted. Rourke looked her straight in the eyes. Someone on the inside. The room spun. Arya felt her heartbeat slow and sharpen. Someone from the police department. Someone with clearance. Authority. Rourke continued. That night, I saw the SUV leaving town fast. Too fast. I radioed it in. But the call never made it through. Why not? Mason asked. Rourke's stare hollowed. Because the man who intercepted it was the same one driving the SUV. The lantern flickered violently. The storm roared. Arya's voice was a whisper. Tell me his name. Rourke hesitated. Then he pointed at the board. At a small photograph in the corner. A young officer. Uniform crisp. Smile bright. Eyes unforgettable. Arya's stomach dropped. No, she breathed. Mason stepped closer, stunned. Is that? Rourke nodded. Yes, he said. Officer Michael Trent. Arya staggered back as if struck. Officer Michael Trent. The Rising Star Patrol officer whose career ended abruptly after Charlotte's disappearance. The officer who died 12 years ago in a boating accident. The officer who originally responded to Charlotte's boyfriend Tyler's crash. The officer who wrote half the contradictory witness statements. The officer everyone trusted. The officer Area's own academy instructors had praised as a model cop. The officer who was supposed to be dead. Area's voice came out hollow. He died. The department held a memorial. I saw the photos. Rourke shook his head slowly. No, Detective Lane. He didn't die. I saw his face 6 months ago. He's alive. Area's blood froze. Mason's hand tightened around his gun. Where is he? Rourke's lips trembled. I don't know. Bullshit, Aria snapped. You've been tracking him for years. Rourke's eyes darkened with something like shame. I've been tracking all of them, he said. Everybody he used. Everybody he threatened. Everybody he killed to protect the truth. I tried to warn the others. One by one. But he got to them first. Area's pulse thundered. Why didn't you come to the police? Rourke laughed. A broken, hopeless sound. You think the police weren't part of it? He had friends. He had leverage. He looked up at the board again. He had everything. A sharp crack echoed through the house. Aria and Mason spun toward the doorway. Not thunder. Not the storm. A gunshot. Mason whipped toward the window. A figure stood in the tree-line. Just for a moment. Just long enough for Aria to see the silhouette. Unmistakable. Lightning flashed. He was gone. Aria's heartbeat shattered into pieces. No. Rourke staggered backward, clutching his shoulder, blood seeping through his shirt. He's here, Mason yelled. Move. Aria shouted. The back window exploded inward. A bullet tore through the lantern, plunging the room into darkness. Aria grabbed Rourke, dragging him behind the table as Mason returned fire into the storm. He's targeting Rourke. Mason shouted over the thunder. Aria pulled Rourke closer. Where is he going next? Tell us. Rourke coughed, blood pooling between his fingers. He always finishes what he starts. Who is his next target? Aria screamed. Rourke's head slumped forward. He strained to speak, and whispered one word. A name. A name Aria hadn't expected. A name that made her blood run cold. Before she could react, a second bullet tore through the window, and the lantern flame ignited the spilled gasoline from Rourke's generator. The fire exploded across the floor. Mason grabbed Aria. We're getting out, now. The house ignited instantly, an inferno devouring everything. Aria dragged Rourke toward the back door, but before she could pull him through the smoke, Rourke pushed her away. No, he wants me dead. His secrets die with me. Aria shook her head violently. I'm not leaving you. Go. Rourke shouted. If you want to stop him, go. A beam collapsed between them. Flames roared upward. Mason yanked Aria through the doorway as the house erupted behind them. Heat blasted across their backs as they stumbled into the storm. The roof caved in. Rourke was gone. Aria spun, choking on rain and smoke. No. No. Mason grabbed her shoulders. We can't save him. Aria's breath trembled, fire reflecting in her eyes. Tell me, Mason said urgently. What name did he say? Aria swallowed, voice breaking. He said, lightning split the sky. Thunder swallowed the rest of her words. But Mason saw it on her face. Saw the horror. Saw the recognition. Because the name wasn't a stranger. The name wasn't a victim. The name wasn't a witness. It was someone terrible. Someone close. Someone who should never have been a suspect. Aria whispered it again. And Mason's blood turned to ice. Because the killer's next target was? My sister, Aria said. The morning after the explosion of revelations, the precinct breathed like a place waking from anesthesia. Sluggish, disoriented, and full of things no one wanted to confront. The hallway buzzed with a quiet dread that clung to the walls like residue. Coffee went cold, phones rang unanswered, and everyone avoided Charlotte's eyes as if the truth she carried might be contagious. Charlotte walked through the precinct with a rhythm different from yesterday, heavier, slower, each step pulled by the weight of what she'd learned. Her mother wasn't a victim, she was an architect. Her father wasn't a bystander, He was a tangle of secrets. Nora wasn't a sister, she was a mirror of betrayal. And Charlotte, caught in the center of this storm, felt like a walking contradiction, a detective trained to uncover the truth, and a daughter terrified of it. The bullpen door creaked as she entered. Detective Reed looked up from his cluttered desk, his expression somber, almost apologetic. "You shouldn't be here yet," he murmured. Charlotte ignored him, dropped a stack of reports onto the table, and slid into her chair. "You said we'd review the Fairfield footage today." Reed sighed. "Charlotte, what happened yesterday, anybody else would have taken the week off. Anybody else isn't trying to solve the death of a teenage girl who died in the exact same woods my family used for God knows what 20 years ago," Charlotte snapped, sharper than she intended. Reed's expression softened. "Then let's get to work." He moved his laptop to the center of the table and queued up the audio file recovered from Emily Crane's phone. A distorted recording captured minutes before she vanished. Crackling leaves. Distant footsteps. Emily's frantic breathing. And then a voice. Unmistakable. "You shouldn't have followed me." Charlotte's hand clenched the table. Reed paused the audio. "You recognize it?" It wasn't a question. Charlotte swallowed hard. "I don't want to." Reed pressed play again. The voice continued, lower, rougher. "Go home, Emily. Walk away." Then Emily's terrified reply, whispering, "Please, please don't." Charlotte winced as the footsteps quickened, overlapping, frantic. Rustling. A scream. And then the forest swallowed everything. The recording ended. Reed exhaled. "Charlotte, that's your father." She closed her eyes. Adrenaline roared through her ears. "No. It can't be. The quality is awful. It could be anyone." Reed didn't push. He simply let the silence hover, waiting for her to fill it. Charlotte finally whispered, "What if it is him?" Reed locked eyes with her. "Then we follow the evidence. No shortcuts. No assumptions. If he's innocent, we'll prove it. If he's not." He didn't finish. He didn't need to. Charlotte pushed back from the table and stood. "Let's go to Fairfield Woods. I don't care how many times we've been there. We missed something. I know it." Reed grabbed his jacket. "I'll drive." The forest remembers. The woods were different today, colder, darker, as if they sensed turmoil in the people crossing their threshold. The trees loomed like silent judges, ancient and unyielding. Charlotte stepped onto the damp soil and inhaled. The scent of moss, pines, and lingering decay filled her lungs. Reed followed behind, carrying the case files and a portable recorder. "Show me the exact spot where Emily was found again," Charlotte said. "Charlotte, you already?" "Show me." Reed nodded and led her through the trail. They passed the rusted fence, the broken log, the half-collapsed fire pit. And then they reached it, the clearing where Emily's body had been discovered, laid out as if someone had apologized too late. Charlotte crouched by the patch of disturbed earth. Why bring her here? Why arrange her body like this? "Staged killer," Reed said. "Message, not murder." Charlotte shook her head. "No, this isn't a message. This is guilt." Reed frowned. "Explain." "You don't stage someone like this unless you want them found. And you don't choose a clearing so specific unless it means something. Whoever put her here, he wasn't hiding her. He was confessing." Reed raised an eyebrow. "Confessing to who?" Charlotte stood, gaze drifting to the tree line. "To me." Reed hesitated. "You think the killer did this because of you?" "I think whoever killed Emily Crane knew exactly who I am, knew what she was investigating, knew she found something about my mother, and wanted to push me, break me, warn me." Reed's jaw tightened. "Or they wanted you to solve it." Charlotte turned sharply. Why the hell would a murderer want a detective to solve anything? Reed looked away. Sometimes the guilty want to be caught. Charlotte narrowed her eyes. "Reed, what aren't you saying?" But before he could answer, a twig snapped behind them. Both spun. A shadow shifted between the trees, tall, slow-moving, deliberate. "Who's there?" Reed barked, hand on his holster. Silence. Charlotte stepped forward. "Dad." The figure froze. Charlotte's heartbeat thundered. Reed whispered, "Charlotte, don't." But she was already striding ahead, pushing branches aside, breath hitching as she saw a man. Not her father. Sheriff Halpern. The retired sheriff. The man who handled Charlotte's mother's case 20 years ago. The one who signed off on every missing evidence form. The one who insisted Margaret Winters likely ran away. He looked older now, heavier, face creased, eyes bloodshot. But his presence still carried authority, even in the shadows. Charlotte inhaled sharply. "Sheriff Halpern? What are you doing here?" Halpern didn't answer at first. He looked past her, to the clearing, to the memory of the body that once lay there. Then his gaze returned to Charlotte, hollow and strange. "You look just like her," he murmured. Charlotte stiffened. "Just like who?" Halpern stepped closer. "Your mother." Tension shot through her body. Reed's hand hovered near his weapon. Charlotte steadied her voice. "Why are you here?" Halpern's lips trembled. "Because something terrible is coming. And you need to stop digging before it takes you to." Charlotte's breath hitched. "What are you talking about?" Halpern shook his head desperately. "Margaret, Emily, they're connected. But you're not ready for the truth. You'll never be ready." Reed stepped forward. "Sheriff, we'll need you to come with us." "You're not in trouble." Halpern recoiled, panic flashing. No, I won't go back there. Not after what I've seen. Not after what I buried." Charlotte grabbed his arm, voice cracking. "Tell me what you buried, Halpern. Tell me now." Halpern's expression shattered, grief flooding through it like a storm cracking glass. "I buried the wrong person," he whispered. Charlotte blinked. "What does that mean?" Halpern looked her in the eyes, voice trembling. "Your mother, she didn't disappear the night your family said she did." Charlotte felt her world tilt. Halpern continued, "She came to me. 2 days after. Bruised. Terrified. She begged me to protect you. Said your father was losing control." Charlotte's chest constricted. Reed inhaled sharply. "You're lying," Charlotte breathed. Halpern's face hardened. "I wish I was." Charlotte stepped back, dizzy. "Why didn't you report it? Why didn't you help her?" "I tried," Halpern whispered. "I hid her. I hid your mother in an old ranger cabin on the North Ridge. She said she'd return for you. She said she'd fix it." Charlotte felt every fragment of her childhood shatter. Reed's voice broke the silence. "So why did she disappear?" Halpern shook his head, eyes welling. "Because she never came back to that cabin. I waited days. Then I found blood. So much blood, but no body. And your father." The forest exploded with a crack of gunfire. Halpern jerked. A bloom of red spread across his chest. He fell backward, eyes wide with shock and clarity. Charlotte screamed, lunging forward, catching him as he collapsed. "Halpern! No, stay with me." Reed drew his weapon, spinning toward the source of the shot. "Shots fired. Show yourself." But the woods offered only silence. Charlotte pressed her hands to Halpern's wound, trembling. Blood seeped through her fingers, warm and fast. Halpern coughed, breath rattling. "You need to go to the cabin?" Charlotte leaned closer, sobbing. "Where is it? Tell me." Halpern's lips parted. A whisper. A single word. "North." Then his body went still. Charlotte froze, hands trembling, tears streaking her cheeks. Reed knelt beside her, checking for a pulse, jaw clenched. "He's gone," he said quietly. Charlotte stared at Halpern's lifeless face. "Someone silenced him," she whispered. "Someone who knew he'd talk." Reed's eyes locked onto hers. "Someone who's been following us." Charlotte stood, blood drying on her hands, breathing shallow and dangerous. "This ends now," she whispered. "We go to the cabin. Today." Reed hesitated. "Charlotte, it could be a trap." She wiped her tears with her sleeve, breath steadying into something colder. "Let it be a trap," she said. "I'm done running from ghosts." She turned toward the direction Halpern had pointed, the North Ridge, where the truth waited like something buried alive. Reed followed, quiet and resigned. And the forest seemed to watch them go, as if it already knew what they were about to find. As if it had been waiting for them all along. The forest changed as Charlotte and Reed pushed deeper into its northern reaches. The air thickened, clinging to their skin like cold breath, and the trees grew older, their trunks wide and cracked like ancient knuckles. The trail narrowed into something less like a path and more like a wound carved through the woods. Every step felt like trespassing. Charlotte walked ahead, her pace unrelenting, eyes fixed on the dense tangle of pines beyond. Blood still dried on her hands, Halpern's blood, and the sticky residue felt like a brand she couldn't wash away. Reed kept a few steps behind, watchful, tense, his hand never far from his holster. "You need to slow down," Reed called after her. Charlotte didn't turn. "We're losing light. We're also walking into unknown territory without backup, without a warrant, without telling anyone where we're going." Charlotte stopped and spun around. Emily Crane didn't get a warning. My mother didn't get a warning. Halpern didn't get a warning. I'm done waiting for permission to save people who are already dead. Reed stared at her for a long moment, then nodded. But we do this smart. We do this fast. Charlotte started walking again. Reed sighed. So, fast and smart. Great. But Charlotte didn't smile. Not even a flicker. The revelation that her mother hadn't vanished when the family claimed that Margaret Winters had been alive, hiding, terrified, carved a hollow pit in her chest. Everything she had believed about her mother's disappearance was crumbling, piece by piece. Her father wasn't just withholding information. He had been at the center of it. The murderer who ambushed them in the woods had silenced Halpern before he could reveal more, which meant someone was watching. Tracking. Always one step ahead. Charlotte pressed through a curtain of branches and abruptly froze at the edge of a steep drop. Reed nearly collided with her. What? Then he saw it too. Below them, nestled in a narrow ravine, stood an old ranger cabin. Weather-beaten. Collapsed porch. Windows boarded over. The roof sagged like a spine bent with age. It looked abandoned, swallowed by the forest years ago. Charlotte exhaled. "The cabin on the north ridge," she whispered. Reed lifted his binoculars. No movement. No cars. No sign anyone's been here recently. "That doesn't mean anything," Charlotte said. "Someone killed Halpern for pointing us here. Or someone killed Halpern because he knew too much about something else." Charlotte didn't respond. She only stared at the cabin, its crooked silhouette tugging at something deep inside her, something painful and familiar. "Come on," she said. "We're going down." Descent into a grave of secrets. The slope was steep, the soil damp, and twice Reed slipped, catching himself on roots. Charlotte didn't stumble once. The cabin pulled her like a magnet, grounded her like gravity. When they reached the base, the air felt colder, unnaturally so. Reed's breath fogged as he spoke. "Why is it like this? It was warm up at the ridge." Charlotte's voice was hollow. "Places hold memories." Reed muttered. "Yeah, well, this place has the worst memories I've ever felt." Charlotte climbed the collapsed porch, the wood groaning under her weight. She pushed the door gently. It creaked open, rusty hinges screaming. The interior was dim, shadows pooling in the corners. Dust floated in the air like exhausted fireflies. Charlotte stepped inside. The air was heavy, stale, tinged with something metallic. Reed followed cautiously. "I'll check the back room." Charlotte nodded and turned toward the left corner of the cabin. There, beneath the boarded window, she saw it, a stain in the floorboards. Blood. Her stomach twisted. She knelt, touched the wood. It felt cold. "Mom," she whispered without meaning to. Reed's voice echoed from the other room. "Charlotte, you need to see this." She rose and followed his voice into a cramped back space, once a storage room. Reed's flashlight beam illuminated a wall covered in markings. Not carvings. Scratches. Dozens. Hundreds. Some long, desperate. Others small and repetitive. Charlotte's breath caught. "She was here," she whispered. "She was here and she was trapped." Reed swallowed. "Looks like she clawed at the walls. Trying to get out." "She was hiding," Charlotte insisted. "Halpern said he brought her here to protect her. Reed looked at the scratches again. This isn't hiding. This is imprisonment. She didn't come here willingly, Charlotte. Charlotte staggered back a step. No, that can't. Reed pointed at the floor. Chains, russet, bolted into the wood. Charlotte's heartbeat crashed in her ears. The room spun. Her mother wasn't hiding here. She was being kept here. Reed's voice was gentle, careful. Charlotte, someone held her captive. Charlotte felt her knees buckle. She braced against the wall, breath ragged. Why would Halpern lie? Why would he say she came here herself? Reed hesitated. Maybe he didn't know. Charlotte shook her head violently. No. He said he saw her. He looked to her. He hid her here. Charlotte. He told me she came willingly. Her voice cracked. Tears blurred her vision. She didn't realize how hard she was gripping the wall until her nails scraped wood. Reed stepped toward her. Charlotte, we don't know the timeline yet. We don't know anything, she shouted. Silence slammed between them. Footsteps outside. Both froze. Reed darted his hand to his gun, moving swiftly to the doorway. He peeked out. Back of the cabin, he whispered. Heavy steps. Not an animal. Charlotte wiped her face, adrenaline flooding her veins. She drew her weapon. Another footstep. Reed motioned silently. Stay behind me. Charlotte didn't. She moved beside him. They stepped out of the cabin, weapons raised. The forest was silent. Too silent. A figure emerged from behind a tree. Charlotte's heart stopped. Dad? Mark Winters stepped into view, his expression unreadable. His clothes were neat, his posture controlled, and his eyes, cold, analytical, scanned the scene with surgical precision. Reed kept his gun trained. Mr. Winters, do not move. Mark raised his hands, palms open. I'm not armed. Charlotte stared at him, jaw trembling. Why are you here? Mark looked at her. Really looked. Because you weren't answering your phone. Because I was worried. Worried? Charlotte whispered. You knew about this cabin? Mark hesitated. And that was enough. Charlotte felt something sharp coil inside her. You did. You knew. Mark didn't move. Charlotte. You kept her here. Mark's jaw clenched. No, I didn't. Charlotte stepped closer, gun trembling in her hands. You lied to me my whole life. Put the gun down, Mark said softly. Let's talk. Talk. Charlotte's voice cracked. About what? How Mom was chained in that room. How she scratched until her nails broke. How you let the entire town believe she ran away. Reed stepped carefully between them. Charlotte breathed. But Charlotte couldn't. She was drowning. Every word Mark spoke felt like poison. Mark's voice stayed calm. Too calm. I didn't chain your mother. I didn't hurt her. Then who did? Charlotte snapped. Mark's silence was its own confession. Reed's gun didn't waver. Mr. Winters, I need you to step back. Mark didn't. His eyes flitted toward the cabin. If she found the chains, then she knows. Knows what? Charlotte demanded. Mark's face hardened. Your mother wasn't what you think she was, Charlotte. She wasn't a victim. Don't, Charlotte warned, voice shaking. Do not blame her. Mark took a slow step forward. Reed barked, stop. But Mark wasn't looking at Reed. Only Charlotte. She didn't run away, Mark said quietly. She ran from you. Charlotte felt stabbed, breath knocked from her throat. What? Mark's expression fractured, grief, fury, fear twisting together. Your mother believed you were dangerous. She believed something was wrong with you. That's enough, Reed growled. But Mark continued. She said you inherited something from her. Something she couldn't control. Charlotte stepped back, trembling. What are you talking about? Mark swallowed hard. Your mother hurt people, Charlotte. She hurt people and said she didn't remember doing it afterward. She said there were blackouts. Said she felt something inside her take over. Something violent. Charlotte shook her head. You're lying. She said you had it too. Stop. She said she saw it in your eyes even when you were little. Stop. Charlotte lunged forward. Reed grabbed her, pulling her back before she collided with her father. "Charlotte!" Reed shouted. "Not like this." Charlotte thrashed against him, sobbing, shaking. "He's lying. Let me go, he's lying." Reed held tight. I know. But you need to breathe." Mark stood still, watching his daughter crumble. No guilt in his eyes. Only dread. "You think I don't know what you're capable of?" Mark whispered. "I raised you." Charlotte went still. Something in Mark's tone shifted, a dark, brittle truth beneath it. Reed saw it too. His voice sharpened. "Mr. Winters, why are you really here?" Mark exhaled. "Because Charlotte will destroy everything if she learns the truth." Charlotte lifted her head slowly. "What truth?" Mark hesitated. And then, gunfire. A bullet exploded from the tree line, ripping through Mark's shoulder. He staggered, spinning, falling to the ground. Reed dragged Charlotte behind a fallen log, shouting, "Sniper! Down!" Charlotte screamed, "Dad!" Another bullet shattered bark inches from her head. Reed unholstered his radio. Shots fired. North Ridge. Static. Someone was jamming their signal. Charlotte peeked over the log. The sniper had vanished into the trees. Reed grabbed her shoulders. "We need to move. Now." Charlotte twisted free. "My father is alive," Reed said firmly. "And we'll get him. But if you stay here, we die." Charlotte looked back at the cabin. The chains. The scratches. Her father bleeding on the ground. And in that moment she understood. Whoever was behind this didn't want Charlotte to learn the truth, and they would kill everyone around her to keep it buried. Charlotte wiped her face, steeling herself. "Reed," she whispered. "What?" "We're not running." Reed stared at her, horror dawning. "Charlotte." She rose to her feet, weapon ready, eyes burning. "We're ending this." She stepped away from the log. Reed followed, reluctantly, jaw clenched. In the distance, a shadow moved between the trees. They were being hunted, and Charlotte Winters was done being prey. The forest was a lung, inhaling and exhaling the cold, whispering breath of dusk. Shadows stretched long and thin across the ground as Charlotte and Reed moved slowly, methodically, weapons raised, every sense sharpened. Behind them, Mark Winters lay bleeding near the old cabin, hidden, Reed having dragged him behind the fallen porch and covered him with leaves and debris. Still alive, still unconscious, but safe, for now. The sniper had disappeared like smoke. Charlotte's pulse throbbed against her ribs as she scanned the tree line. "He's still here." Reed stood beside her, his voice low. "Then we move north. Whoever's hunting us is pushing us in that direction." Charlotte met his eyes. "You think they want us to follow?" Reed nodded grimly. "Yeah. And they've probably set something up ahead." Charlotte didn't care. If someone wanted to lure her deeper, she would walk willingly. She needed answers. She needed the truth. And she needed to face whoever had destroyed her life, her mother's life, and who was now trying to destroy her. Charlotte tightened her grip on her gun. "Let's go." They moved forward, slipping between the trees, footsteps muffled by damp earth. The world smelled of moss, sap, and something else, something metallic. Blood. Reed sniffed the air. "Do you smell that?" Charlotte nodded. "It's close." A cold wind rustled the branches, and the forest opened into a small clearing. In the center stood a structure Charlotte had seen only in old ranger photos. A stone pump house, long abandoned, half collapsed, covered in vines. Reed lifted his flashlight. "What is this place?" Charlotte's voice was a whisper. "It's where my mother was last seen, before she disappeared the first time." Reed stiffened. "This is where she was found?" Charlotte nodded. "She came here to meet someone. She never came home." Reed's hand moved reflexively to his holster. "Then this is a trap." Charlotte exhaled. "Good." The pump house. The pump house door was ajar. Just enough to see darkness inside. Reed murmured, "I'll go first." Charlotte stepped forward before he could finish. Her flashlight beam cut through dust and silence. She walked down the worn stone steps into the old facility, her boots echoing faintly. The air was cold, thick, and stagnant. The stone walls were lined with rusted pipes, and water dripped rhythmically in the distance. Reed followed closely behind her. "Stay close." "Don't worry," Charlotte murmured. "I'm not letting anyone else die for me." The drip of water echoed like a heartbeat in the dark. Then a voice broke the silence. "I wondered how long it would take you to find this place." Charlotte froze. Reed raised his gun. "Show yourself." Footsteps emerged from deeper inside the pump house, measured, confident. A tall figure stepped into the beam of Charlotte's flashlight, and Charlotte felt her blood turn to ice. "Agent Nora Vance," she breathed. Nora tilted her head. "You've been busy, Charlotte." Reed's eyes widened. "FBI? What the hell?" Nora smiled slightly. "Not anymore." Charlotte took one step forward, gun raised. "You shot Halpern." Nora's eyes glittered. "Yes." "You tried to kill my father." "Yes." "You've been following us." "Yes." Charlotte's voice cracked. "Why?" Nora exhaled, almost gently. "Because Margaret Winters was my partner." Charlotte's mind snapped back. Her mother had been part of a federal investigation. Her mother had been under protection. Her mother had been someone else. Charlotte tightened her jaw. "My mother wasn't who she said she was." Nora nodded slowly. "No, she wasn't." Reed hissed, "What's going on?" Charlotte's voice was cold. "Let her talk." Nora clasped her hands behind her back. Margaret Winters, real name Margaret Crane, was undercover. She was working a case involving a cult called the Black Ferrum. They believed certain people carried something they called the shadow inside. They believed those people were dangerous, wicked, capable of violence they couldn't control. Charlotte felt something crack inside her. "You mean the things my father told me?" "Yes." "And you believed him?" Nora's expression hardened. "I believed your mother." Charlotte's breath trembled. "She thought I inherited something?" Nora nodded. "She said it started when you were 5. Rage. Dissociation. Violent blackouts." Charlotte's vision blurred. "No. I've never hurt anyone." "No," Nora agreed softly. "Because she took it away from you." Charlotte blinked. "What?" Nora's voice dropped to a whisper. "Your mother joined the Black Ferrum to learn how to suppress what she believed was inside you. They taught her rituals, control techniques. She took your affliction into herself. She held it. Alone." Charlotte felt her knees weaken. Reed muttered, "This is insane." Nora shook her head. "Not insane. Dangerous." Charlotte whispered, "Then why did she disappear?" Nora's eyes darkened. "Because someone in the cult wanted her dead. They wanted you released. They believed the shadow belonged to you, not her." Charlotte felt her heart nearly stop. "Who?" Nora smiled coldly. "Your mother's killer." Reed raised his gun. "Where is he?" Nora stepped aside, revealing a second figure stepping out of the dark. Charlotte's stomach collapsed. "Hello, Charlotte." It was Sheriff Mendez. Her mentor. Her friend. The man who'd held her when she cried after her mother's disappearance. Reed staggered back. "Holy!" Charlotte's voice was barely a whisper. "Why?" Mendez stepped forward, face calm, eyes dead. "Because your mother ruined everything. She took something sacred, something powerful, and locked it away inside herself. It was meant for you." Charlotte's skin crawled. "You killed her." "Yes," Mendez said casually. "She was weak. She thought she could protect you by taking the burden." Charlotte felt her vision pulse black at the edges. Reed stepped forward. "You chained her at the cabin." Mendez shrugged. "She wouldn't come willingly." Charlotte's blood boiled. "You tortured her." "Not tortured," Mendez corrected. "Purified." Charlotte screamed, lunging forward. Reed grabbed her, holding her back with all his strength. Nora smirked. "She has her mother's fire." Mendez's smile widened. "And her mother's gift." Reed's voice cracked. "Your mother didn't have a curse, Charlotte. These people are psychotic." Nora's eyes flashed with fury. "We are believers." Believers in killing innocent women? Reed snapped. Mendez raised his gun. Your mother wasn't innocent. She was infected. Charlotte hissed. What does that mean? Mendez looked at her with devotion. Sick, twisted devotion. The shadow lives inside certain bloodlines. It enhances strength, awareness, rage, pure violence. Your mother had it. You inherited it. Charlotte shook her head. I don't have anything. Mendez smiled. Don't you? He pointed at Reed. How many times have you almost killed someone in a moment of anger? Charlotte froze. Remember your suspension from the academy? Mendez whispered. The man whose nose you shattered? Charlotte's chest tightened painfully. That wasn't you, Mendez said. That was the shadow. Stop! Charlotte screamed. Nora raised her gun, pointing at Charlotte. It's time you accept who you are. Reed moved instantly. He shoved Charlotte to the ground. Gunshot. A white flash ripped across the room. Reed hit the stone wall and fell to his knees, blood spreading across his shoulder. Charlotte screamed, Reed! Nora stepped forward to fire again. But Charlotte was faster. She surged to her feet, firing twice. Nora dropped instantly. Mendez lunged, roaring, firing blindly. Charlotte dove behind a rusted pipe. Bullets ricocheted, sparks showering the stone floor. Reed crawled, blood spilling. Charlotte, don't. But Charlotte was already moving. She came out from behind the pipe like a storm, firing with brutal precision. Mendez staggered back, bullets ripping through his side. He didn't fall. He charged. Charlotte screamed, firing again and again. Mendez slammed into her, knocking her gun away, sending them both crashing to the floor. His hands wrapped around her throat, squeezing. You were meant to finish what your mother started, he snarled. Let the shadow in. Charlotte clawed at his arms, vision dimming, lungs collapsing. Reed struggled to lift his gun. Mendez slammed Charlotte's head against the concrete. Just give in. Charlotte's vision went black for a moment, then exploded in white-hot fury. Her hands found Mendez's throat, and she squeezed. Not in panic, not in desperation, but with pure, unstoppable force. Mendez gasped, eyes bulging. Good, just like her. Charlotte growled, I am nothing like her. She twisted. Mendez's neck snapped. Silence swallowed the pump house. Charlotte collapsed, coughing, shaking violently. Reed dragged himself over, pulling her into his arms. It's over, he breathed. It's over, Charlotte. Charlotte sobbed into his chest. I don't want it inside me. I don't want any of it. Reed held her tighter. You don't have a shadow. You have trauma. And you're human. That's all. Charlotte cried harder. After a long moment, she whispered, My mother died trying to protect me. Yes, Reed said softly. Charlotte looked around at the bodies. But I ended it. You did, Reed whispered. And you saved us. Epilogue. 3 months later. The forest had grown quiet again. Charlotte stood at the edge of the north ridge, the wind brushing her hair. She held a small wooden box, her mother's ashes. Reed stood behind her, arm in a sling. You ready? Charlotte nodded. She opened the box and let the wind carry the ashes into the ravine below, where the cabin once stood. Goodbye, Mom, she whispered. When the last of the ashes disappeared into the trees, Charlotte turned to Reed. He smiled gently. What now? Charlotte exhaled. Well, I rebuild. And the darkness? Reed asked quietly. Charlotte looked toward the forest. Once terrifying, now simply a place holding memories. I beat it, she said. And it's staying buried. Reed smiled. Then let's go home. Charlotte nodded. As they walked back toward the trail, Charlotte felt something she hadn't felt in years. The forest exhaled behind her, and the shadows stayed where they belonged.